All right. Well, I'm going to get started at least with the kind of intro section. Um, First of all, welcome to the XRedRocks. If this happens to be your first time, we're stoked to have you. Gavin's not on this one because he's in the PWC over in Grindelwald, sitting in the rain, I think, but still sounds probably better than what the rest of us are probably doing. This is the first. We're gonna do more. Um, these were done last year. You'll see if you watch last year's and this. As an example, this slide deck's not going to change particularly much because things that were true then are true now. But I'll have more to say, and you guys will be able to interact, which is the point of doing this. Um, we're gonna try to aim for kind of like every 2 weeks to be doing some training, some Zoom stuff. Last year I did a fairly long one about how to like think about hike and fly racing and how to plan it, because I think a lot of times for new athletes the strategy part gets missed. So we're gonna probably do a couple of those is our goal. Last year I used a race I did as an example in France. Now that we have more detail from Monroe, we'll use actually Monroe this year, which I think should be fairly instructive for folks. Um, the so if you're in challenge, and not everyone is, there's some adventure folks here too, which is awesome. But uh, if you're in challenge, we're highly recommend to one, follow all these webinars, and two, um, to either do the training that I put out, or if you're on the super fit end, but you're a new to hike and fly and new to flying, kind of take the training and incorporate it into what you're doing, because being a triathlete or just a trail runner, it doesn't always completely transfer over. Um, but we'll be having like I said, more of these, more guests. Gavin will do some. We'll get some celebrity guests to do some of these, and we'll just keep talking. I think the goal is we'll do a challenge Telegram group this time, so that questions can get chucked on there, and then that'll help when we're actually in the race. Our intention this year is that um, at a minimum every morning. And everyone's gonna have to get up a little bit earlier, but we will meet and we will have a briefing for challenge that will be about strategy, about how to think about the day, any questions anyone has, and so that we can arm you guys with good knowledge to go out for the day. We may have some evening sessions, but some days those days the retrieve gets jacked, and there's nobody who wants to go sit around and talk after they've just exercised for 12 hours and had a 2 hour retrieve. So we'll see how those ones go. But that's going to be the goal. We're going to try and tailor the tasks even a little more to make sense for challenge. We still want you guys, with the others for some piece of it, just because it's fun. And there's the logistics part, but there's also just the fun part. It's fun to start with 100 people and go running up a mountain. So that's kind of the basics on what it'll be like when we get there, but there'll be a lot more to come on that sense as we move forward. What we're going to talk about now is training for hike and fly racing. This is, thoughts coming out of my head. I've been training people for hike and fly racing since 2015, and then training people for 25 years. And there's other ways to do it. This isn't the only way to do it. It's just if you're new to it, you'll get some good results. And you'll be less miserable out there while you're racing. Um, when you signed up for challenge, you're automatically included into the training, and the training is going to have and we'll talk about the specifics on how you get it, but there's going to be an A group and a B group. And essentially, A group is going to be uh, that you've done a decent amount of training before, and B group's a little more untrained. And you can mix and match those. So you'll be able to look at the workouts each day and decide if you should do an A group or a B group workout. I do that because, we got 30 some people on this call. It's gonna be pretty varied in everyone's abilities. But between the two groups, it should be able to capture everyone enough, or you could blend the two and kind of make your own decisions. Um, we'll be doing some strength training that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. There'll be video links for stuff that I think is odd, and there will be not for things that I think you should be able to just Google, like how to do an air squat or something. There's 50,000 videos for some of this stuff. If I want something very specific, there'll definitely be a video link. The strength training in the B group will be a little more focused on body weight only, with maybe, like a duffel bag or something to give some resistance. And the A group strength training will be a little more focused in the gym. So again, you could mix and match those to kind of fix what you know and what you're all about. So I'm going to dive into the slide deck and start talking about training, unless someone has an initial question that's not specific to training. Cool. Okay. Let me see if this share screen is going to work. It's me. And PowerPoint.
Have a safe landing, Kevin.
Is this is my screen coming up and looking like it should with some narrative and a paraglider on the front?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. So the bottom line, there's probably the important part: train hard, suffer less. Part of why we started this exercise is after the first year, we got a lot of feedback that said something like, wow, that was really hard and maybe too hard. And the answer is yes, hike and fly racing is hard. It's hard for everyone who does it. We try and make the tasks such that they're appropriate to each group. But if it was easy, then you would hike up a 1,000-foot hill, fly down, and call it a day. And everyone does that anyway. So we're trying to make it a little more challenging than that. So we don't want you to end the week completely destroyed and unable to move, but we want you to feel pretty smoked and like you had a big challenge. And that all gets a lot more fun with some training. See if I can get this thing to, there we go. So what to expect? These are very broad brushed, but I think they're fairly good. Academy says 3,000 to 4,500 feet of elevation gain daily with 10 to 15 miles on trails and roads. There are days where it's entirely possible you have one hike and that'll be the day, and the weather may dictate. I think our goal is going to be to try and set some tasks for challenge that involves two hikes. That's kind of fun, makes you pack up, makes you refocus. As always, the weather kind of gives what it gives, but that should be kind of like in your head that 4,500 feet a day and 10 to 15 miles on trails and roads is doable. Don't have to run. I'm not asking you to run. You can complete this all doing some hiking and walking. If you're an adventure folk, 6,000, 8,000 feet with 15 to 20 miles. That's, minimum of two big hikes, maybe a third. And especially if the weather sucks, and you would know if you raced last year, there can be some very long ends of the day because it's 4 o'clock and and there's no more flying to be had. So you're going to walk till 7 or whatever our Indian time is. And we'll talk more about training for those kinds of things. You're going to face it's central Utah in early October. We've had starts where it's in the 20s, and we've had some just ripping blazing days out there in the heat. So dealing with the cold and the heat's important. Nutritional and hydration challenges. There is an amount of support in this race. The first year we did it was unsupported completely, and that proved to be insane. But the it's you don't have a supporter like you do in the X Alps. So you've got to move towards support if you need it. You need to make your way to a grocery store if you need it. These are all these things that come into play when you're picking your route based on the day and what the conditions are doing. And it also weighs into when you're training to make sure you're training not carrying the minimum amount, but maybe throwing in 1.5 liters of water or 2 or 3 if you're one of those people that needs to drink a ton. Because again, we've had some pretty long ends of the day with not a whole lot of people around. So, and then I said fatigue can influence navigational choices as well as flying ability. That's a nod towards wanting to be physically fit for hike and fly because you still need to be cognizant, coherent, and making good decisions. And we all know the more smoked we are, the more our decision making decreases in its quality. Must be fit enough to arrive at launch and be able to execute a safe launch, flight, and landing in active conditions. This sport is not like a lot of other sports because, and there's others, that's hyperbole, but we all know flying's dangerous. It just is. And you can make it more dangerous based on lack of ability. You can make it more dangerous based on choosing to fly in conditions that aren't appropriate to you. And you can make it more dangerous by not being physically fit or mentally prepared for what you're about to do. We see this stuff every year, and we keep trying to make the race safer without dumbing it down to where it's not a race. And a lot of that's got to be on the pilot. Gavin closed launches last year. We're not going to do that anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. We're going to offer advice. And part of why we did the best 3 out of 4 days, I think everyone saw that, is if the day is super jacked and way out of your ability level, take the day off. Just don't try. That's kind of what we're thinking there. But getting hurt sucks, and we're here to have fun. So just keep thinking about that. That one. There we go. All right. So these principles are here because whether you do the training with me, I want you to know why you're doing it. And if you don't do the training with me, I want you to take these thoughts and run with it on your own. So the first one's build a sport-specific aerobic base. That's a bunch of word salad that says you need to be sport-specific, which means you need to hike. And some running can be part of that for sure, but you need time on foot with a pack on specifically. And you need to work towards building as large of an aerobic base as you can. And we're going to talk about how you get there in a little bit. The strength training piece, I think if you follow endurance sports in general, if you follow the X Alps specifically, you'll see that over the last years, more of these guys and girls are talking about making sure they include strength training. And to me, the key pieces of that are a little bit of muscle. Again, we have to carry our body weight, so we don't want to be huge, but it goes a long way. First of all, when things go bad, when you hit the ground, having a little muscle on your body is going to help when you have a bad landing. It's also going to help being athletic. I'm an endurance runner, but if all you do is run in a straight line all the time and do nothing else, you lose the ability to cut and move and sprint and jump over objects and all those things that we have to do on launchings and landings. So I also think it just makes you feel good, and it helps with some of the overuse injuries. being able to squat to depth and do a nice lunge is going to help your knees as opposed to hurt them. It'll actually make them better. So moving on, frequent long training days are key. So you can't do a 12-hour race and only train 1 hour only. Doesn't mean you can't train for 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, but then on Saturday or Sunday or whatever your weekend days, you need to get out and do some long days. You don't start with a 12-hour day, start with a 90-minute or 2 hour day. But we've got to go long to go long. And that sounds obvious, but a lot of people try and shortcut that, and there's real no shortcut. Um, you've got to condition your connective tissues, you got to condition your feet. Your body has to learn how to process food without your gut shutting down. All these things are key to training long days, and we'll talk a little more about those soon. Road walking is not hiking. Train both. Walking on the road sucks. Um, and it's amazing how many people's feet get destroyed doing this who can also go run long distances or hike. And it's about the pack. It's about the way you make your stride. You've got to train it to train it. And you'll learn, like, if you need to start taping your feet. You'll learn if the shoes you're wearing or have any value for walking on the roads. So it's important to actually do this as part of the training. Mobility and self-care are mandatory. One of the hardest things for people to do when they're training hard is to rest. And days off are where your body adapts and gets strong and healthy. So our weeks of, not multiple weeks, but like taking a week of a recovery week. I call those deload weeks. So you're still training, but it's a lot less. And, you may be itching to get out there, but you'll find, especially if you've been training hard, that you don't know you need it, and then you need it. You sleep better. You come out of it feeling, more excited to train, more fit. So it's important to take those recovery weeks. And mobility and self-care. Mobility is a fancy way of stretching. So I'll put some mobility work at the end of the workouts. The movements will be referenced by a particular website that you can use. You can also do your own stuff. If you're great at going to yoga a couple times a week, great. If you subscribe to one of those services like Pliability, which has like the 20 minutes stretching every day, awesome. You don't need to do what we're doing on here. The point is you got to take care of yourself, especially if you're training hard. Personally, what I like to do is do it in the evening. Instead of sitting on the couch, I sit on the floor, talk to my kids, and I get my mobility done watching a little TV or having a conversation. Everyone's different. You can do it before, you can do it after. There's no right or wrong, but it's got to get done. And then the last one is consistency is more important than infrequent but harder work. So it would be better to do 6 90-minute sessions a week than at a moderate heart rate than do 2 or 3 sessions at max heart rate for an hour or something like that. And the next slide, I think, is going to talk about anaerobic versus aerobic work. But for this sport, we want more exposure, more repeated exposure. We all have a life. I got a job or two and kids and everything else that we're all trying to do. You just got to find the time, but you want to be consistent. The lack of consistency will bite you in the ass come the second or third day of the race. Before I move on, next slide, does anyone have any questions about this one? Cool. All right, I gotta move my window here. The sport-specific aerobic base. So we were talking about that earlier. So aerobic is it's a couple of things. It's where our body can move for a very long period of time and It will need fuel, but it doesn't need immediate fuel. Normally, those fuel stores will start to go low after 90 minutes, and they're easily replenishable. Um, your brain, which runs on a ton of sugar, is generally not affected, at least for until you go for a very long time. And it's also where the body can oxidize fat and use that as some fuel as well. So most of what we are doing is in the aerobic zone, and there's the high end, and there's the kind of all day zone. Anaerobic work, or even super high end in the aerobic, is the salt and pepper in your training. It needs to be there. It's going to help increase VO2 max. It's going to do, it's going to help with, again, connective tissue and being able to actually fire those legs when you need them. But it shouldn't be the bread and butter of what you're doing. The bread and butter should feel mildly uncomfortable to mildly pretty good, not hard all the time. So if it's hard all the time, you're doing too much of it. And the bigger your aerobic base, the faster you go at the same heart rate is one way to look at it. Or, so, if you take a deconditioned person, they can barely do a 10-minute mile or a 12-minute mile at 135 beats a minute. And a very, very fit person can probably do a 730 mile at 135 beats a minute. Conversely, they can keep that trend keeps going, and they can actually then run whatever, a 5-minute mile at 160 beats a minute. Whereas the very untrained person, can't run a 5-minute mile. So one way to really think about it is our goal is to stay in that aerobic zone. And a baseline in that aerobic zone is down there. It says heart rate 180 minus your age, or a rate of perceived exertion of 5. And I'll dig into that in a minute. But if we stay somewhere in that zone, over time, we get more fit, even though we're still in the same zone, and it allows us to go longer and longer and longer and longer. Because Kriegel's not out there doing 190 beats a minute for a 12-day race. He's doing 135 to 145. Most of it, he's just doing it a lot faster than the rest of us because his aerobic base is enormous. So that's our goal. How do you get there? You do a lot more aerobic work. The sport specific part, that has to do with the fact that we are going to be hiking up mountains, steep ones. And again, it's not the same thing as trail running. I love trail running, but like I have to make myself go hike more. Even if you can't fly, there's a lot of value to hiking up and hiking down. It's going to help keep you from blowing your legs out on a big day. Again, under load's important. It's important to vary the load, do some days with quite a bit of load, maybe twice the weight of your normal hike and fly pack. And then most of it should be in your general hike and fly area in terms of weight. And then some days you actually go lighter so you can go faster. That's important too. We'll work on a muscular endurance phase. That's there to just kind of put a point on that whole taking a phase, working some very heavy work, kind of abusing the legs in a concentrated volume so that you come out of it with them fairly resilient to hard work. So that's no one's favorite phase, but it'll be there. The heart rate. So I will give some general heart rate guidance, and I'll also give some RPE guidance. RPE is rate of perceived exertion. 5 is kind of like, well, let me step back. It's always related to what you're doing and how long of duration. So as an example, an RPE of 10 in a marathon would be your best marathon time, and a RPE of 5 would be a 5 of 10 average marathon time, right? But an RPE of 10 for a 1 mile time would be much faster pace than your marathon time, even though they're both 10. So it's always related to what you're doing. Heart rate, I'll give some info there too. If you want to use your heart rate monitor, sweet. I encourage it. It's a bunch of interesting studies. So RPE is actually pretty accurate. Most people tune themselves to it pretty well. So, whatever makes you happy. I said 90 minutes is a sweet spot where magic begins to happen. That doesn't mean we should or need to exercise more than 90 minutes every day. It's that spot, though, where your body starts to decide that maybe it's running out of fuel, which is generally glycogen or sugar, where that fat oxidation starts to take place, where heat or cold start to influence other parts of your body. And so enough exposure of 90 minutes or more is important. Um, you know, what's enough? It all depends. Are you trying to win the X Alps? Or are you doing challenge division at the XRedRocks? So they're pretty different. We'll get you ready, but just keep that in mind for future stuff. Got any questions on this slide? Right. Strength training. We will do some. I think it's very important. I think you got to remember that it's a tool, not a benchmark. So, like, nobody cares in our sport how much you can deadlift. The point is to use the deadlift to make you better at your sport. So, if you need to keep track of numbers so that you know how to increase, great. If you don't need to and you can just walk out there and know that you have that decent feeling based on the reps that are given, I think that's great too. So that comes easier to people who've strength trained longer than that's new. Um, Hopefully, if strength training is new to you, you'll find it uh, not just good for you, but you'll actually enjoy it. Most people I train do end up enjoying being in the gym. Uh, Strong bodies with some muscle are more durable. We talked about that before. Um, I'm a strong believer in that. I broke my back flying and got a huge fusion, and the surgeon said I'd be paralyzed if I didn't have a strong back. And hope no one ever does that, but I think being fit and having a little bit of muscle on you is important for the things we do when they go wrong. But you don't want too much muscle because we carry our engine. And so that's a way of just noting that we all have some optimal body weight that has nothing to do with how good you look in your pants. It's optimal body weight for you to move efficiently through the mountains. Um, and so over time, you're going to figure out where that is. Like I know mine within a few pounds. And again, it's not a vanity thing. It's just I know where I'm fit and I still feel strong. And I'm fast, but I've got some resiliency. So as you go through training, just pay attention to that. And if you find your sweet spots, it's good to pay attention to it. It'll change a little as you get older. It gets harder to stay in your sweet spot, but it's still good to know. That being said, almost everyone that I run into who isn't a actual, very focused bodybuilder tend to have more body fat and not excess muscle. So uh, I wouldn't be scared of strength training unless you literally have been, you know, doing bodybuilding for the last 15 years and are desperately trying to lose weight. Um, Most people can lose body fat before they can lose muscle. And strength training will help. Uh, Resistance training mixed with good endurance training is the fastest way to lose body fat. And then you lose some body fat, you get to your optimal weight, and you go faster. Um, if you aren't going to do my training, I would just say stick to the basics. And I listed some, uh, movements to do in the gym there. Um, Stick to those. Don't get fancy. You don't need to go watch the latest CrossFit video and make the world's craziest workout. You just need to go in, 2, 3 times a week, spend 30, 40 minutes and do the basics, and it'll go a long way. Um, And that'll help with the last thing, which just says sometimes we lack athleticism because we're always moving in a straight line, and the gym can help with that. Anyone have a question on this slide? Cool. Specific to hike and fly. Uh, we talked about it a bit already. Walking on the road sucks, but it's mandatory. So train it or you're going to be miserable. Day two last year, we had a interesting start to the task with a couple of options. Um, One of the options basically didn't work at all, and they hiked up and either took a sledder or basically walked down. Option two was a launching further down the route, and it worked enough. We got a little farther on the flight, and then we all tried to refly, and there was a bunch of people trying to refly, and it was a hard day. It was windy but stable. Um, and what basically happened is that 90% of everyone competing that day walked somewhere between 5 and 8 hours, depending on when they figured out they weren't flying anymore. And that was day two. And then day three, the weather was horrible, and we basically ran almost a marathon. Um, so I hope that doesn't happen, but it can. And and that's why you got to train the stuff. You got to walk. You got to do some pack running, not a ton. If you're new to this, that should come later. But do the specific work. So the first one's walking on roads. Next one's walking down. So some of your training needs to be walking down because you're gonna walk down, and you don't want to then have your day ruined because you're the class. My knees hurt. I can't walk down. It's like, well, do more of it. So don't forget to train that. Uh, there's some fun stuff you can do. It's not all misery and work. If you can find like a short hill, you can do some hike and fly laps. So there can be your salt, your pepper for the day. You can get your anaerobic work, and then you can really work on your training, your pack, and your repacking. You can train on what if you side hill landed and wanted to hike with a rosette, which sounds easy until you're doing it for a few hundred meters and then you want to quit. Um, and you'll get your clothing dialed in, you'll get your gear, you get your stuff in the right place, you'll make sure you don't forget your water, you get your poles dialed in. All this is important. And it seems like that would be only for the best of best, but you won't believe how much time people waste uh, on the pack and unpack portion alone, right? So, we kind of talk about 2 minutes is the gold standard. I think anything under 4 minutes is totally reasonable for any of us to learn. And longer than that gets crazy obscene because people will take 15 minutes. You do that twice, well, that's 30 minutes. And now you do it for three flights and you just spent an hour and a half playing with your gear instead of, moving towards a better launch or being efficient with your time or looking at the weather or whatever. So be efficient, get a rhythm. It'll be something fun to train over the summer, and just get better at the things that aren't your everyday I'm going flying routine. And it says train with poles. I almost everyone seems to have gotten that now. That's for the uphill. It is like they've done a bunch of studies with a pack specifically. It's like 30% more efficient. I don't like them on the roads, so I stow them in my backpack on the roads. There's seems to be no efficiency gain on the roads, but some people do. That's up to you. But I would highly encourage on the uphill having poles in your hands. Questions? Cool. All right. Uh, Long days, simulations, and deep base. So this picture of Gavin is the last day of the X Alps in 2015. So we were 11 days in, and he had just walked 114 kilometers, I think, without stopping because we were trying to get to goal to finish the race. Um, I put that picture in there because it's like that's why you do long days and simulations and get a deep base so you can pull that off. Now, I'm not telling you that you're going to need to walk 115 kilometers and challenge at the XRedRocks, but I think it gives some perspective. So the most important thing is the long day is sacred. You should have one per week, and it's literally more important than the other days. And so your long day is as long as is as intelligent for you. So starting next week, if you've never done 2 hours in the mountains, it should probably start at 2 hours. And we will grow, up to 6 or 7 as we get closer to the race. And the benefit your body gets out of that long day is the most important day. So that's like the one you can't screw up. You can move it around, doesn't have to be on Saturday if I put it there. Do it whenever you want, but try and get it done. It's almost just as fine for you to do like 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours at night if that's what you need to. So just think about that. Things don't have to be exactly the way they're written, but that's what we want to get to is making sure that long day happens. I plan my entire week around knowing that that needs to happen some way somehow. Um, so I say start at 90% of your limit and build from there. So if your limit is 2 hours, then start at an hour and 45. Doesn't matter. No shame. We're all different, but we want to start a little bit high and go from there. And the goal is not to go as hard as you can for that time. It's to get in that aerobic zone that we're talking about and know that you're trying to get at 90% of your time limit, not 90% of your pace limit. So I think that's an important distinction. Um, you can see all the things that the long day improves. I don't need to read that to you. And we've kind of been talking about it as we go through it. Those then lead into simulations. And simulation is just a fancy way of saying try and plan, you know, a 1 day and then maybe a 2 day uh, task for yourself that's should be a lot like what you're going to do. Um, so something uh, something like, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to um, hold on one sec. Kirby, I saw your message. Will you tell me what you're exactly
I'm
talking about?
sorry, I didn't mean to mess you up. I was just curious how you would define limit. Obviously, you're hydrating and it's or hydrating, fueling, and it's relatively low intensity. But how would you define limit, or where we would start for that?
Um, I would say 90% of what you can do, um, and at the end of it, basically like wake up the next day and go, that was pretty damn hard, but I don't want to fall apart. There's no good numbers with that, but what I don't want you to do is start somewhere where it basically breaks you for the whole week. Because that's not useful either. You you know, having your training result in not more training is not a good thing. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, if anything, just go under and then see what happens and go from there. Um, oh, so the simulations. That's kind of the same thing. When you're planning your first one, don't go berserk. But the XRedRocks, I think we start at 7. So you want to like do these things where it's the same thing. It's like I'm gonna wake up, make myself eat what I think I'm gonna eat in the Red Rocks. I'm gonna pack my stuff the way I would pack there. That we're gonna say go, and I'm gonna go as hard as I think I would go for a 3,000-foot hike, and then I'm gonna take a flight that's almost guaranteed to be a sledder, and then I'm gonna walk for a couple hours, and then I'm gonna hike up another mountain, and then I'm gonna fly. And maybe if the flying's good, then I'm gonna use that, and I'm gonna work on flying, improving my XC flying while being tired. And if it sucks, I'm gonna land, and I'm gonna walk for 3 hours, and I'm gonna call that a day. And in there, I'm gonna have to make myself find some food. Maybe you've pre-planned some drops. You're kind of getting the thought on what a simulation is. That you've do you carry a change of socks? You know, these are all those things you'll figure out by doing 3 days or a full hike and fly day with, um, 3 different flights and varying weather conditions, etc. Like a small thing, I always carry a dry t-shirt. And so when I get to launch, I put on the dry t-shirt. And when I land, I put the wet, soggy one back on, especially if it's hot. Um, and that makes me happy. And I know it makes my body feel good. Not everyone does that, but those are those things you learn by doing simulations and racing. Uh, they can be harder than race day, and just keep that in mind that a lot of people that I train, they feel pretty smashed at the end, and that's okay. You're building towards something. It's training, um, and so just take a hard day and be happy with it. Um, the deep base part I put in there, it's just it. The more endurance history you have, the more you have. It does not go all the way away, and so if you've had a big base and maybe some time off, then don't be afraid after you've gotten into a little bit of training to start pushing it a little bit. And also don't be discouraged if it takes a little bit of time to get that 10 to 15% back. The flip side of that is if you haven't done a ton of endurance training, you might have a friend who looks like they've sat on the couch for the last year, but previously did 8 years of triathlons, and within a month they're kicking your ass. That's time in life. And I just want everyone to keep themselves in perspective because that's all that matters. You're not trying to be better than anyone else. You're just trying to be better than you were yesterday and in a month and in 6 months. And if you stick with it, it really will build over time and make a huge difference. Any questions on that one? Cool. Self-care and when to rest. So we talked about it on the title screen or the intro screen. Mobility work, stretching, massage, um, trying to find some of those in limits of range of motion. Um, muscle stim, so like a complex or one of those are great. Desensitize, that means like I suffer from Achilles tendonitis at times, and desensitization is when you can take like a butter knife and rub on your Achilles tendon. It doesn't feel very good, but over time it actually helps deal with the tendonitis. Um, so there's a bunch of different ways that can be done. Um, the second one in says thereadystate.com. The mobility I give references terms that they use on that website, and there's books associated with that website. And if you want to do that, you can go there. You can also use Google terms, and you'll probably find most of the stretches I'm talking about. But there are these other things you can do. You can go to yoga. Pliability.com is another awesome one. It's like $10 a month. You get 20 minutes of stretching a day. That's awesome. So don't skimp out on this. Um, that being said, self-massage is like critical. So you need to get a foam roller. You got to get some small ball like a lacrosse ball or something that you can mash your tissue with. If you're mashing a piece of tissue and it hurts, then it's sensitive. It shouldn't be sensitive when you massage it. Now, mine is all the time when I'm training hard. So I'm not saying it's going to go away, but it's an indication that it's asking to be massaged. If you do this training in full effort, you're going to need to do some self-care, and some self-massage is going to be part of it. Uh, Sitting sucks. Not here to preach your lifestyle, but try and stand more, try and do standing desks. It'll help with your training. Um, and it'll help make your feet stronger. It'll help your posture get better, blah, blah, blah. There's a million books out there, but just be thoughtful not to spend all day sitting, even or except for when you're training. And the last one is almost everyone who has some kind of weird knee issue, growing issue, ankle issue, a lot of it's all traced back to their hips. So when you look at most Americans walking around, their feet are turned out or they're turned in and they're not really turned straight, or are straight. And that's because they've got some tight hips. So work on your hips. That's like pigeon stretching as a baseline. There's a bunch of other stretches, but kind of daily taking care of your hips. It also take care of any low back pain or at least help with it. But when you're training hard, you're going to cause inflammation in your hips. And the only way to deal with that is to have a daily routine of taking care of it. We talked about the recovery deload week already, so I'm not going to uh, uh, not going to go through that too much here. Again, any any questions on this one? Nope, that one. Okay. Consistency. We talked about this. It should be a life habit. So, you know, I plan my week trying to figure out how to get my workouts done. And so I'll make notes on my training peaks, which we're going to talk here in about in a minute. And that will, I'll note AM, PM. I'll move workouts around from where I thought they were going to be. I'll also sometimes realize I'm just not going to get one done. But then I'm trying to make um, a good decision on which one's the most important to get done, or which is the one I can actually get up at 4:30 in the morning and make this happen. So you got to make it a life habit. It's got to be a weekly habit. When you think about how to order things, the sport specific, for the most part, is the most important. So, making sure to get your hike and fly in, or just your hike and hike and your long days should be above everything else. Um, if there's 2 gym days, try and do one, but maybe skip the other if you need to miss one. Those are those things to think about. But you want to go to bed knowing what you're doing tomorrow for your training, not trying to freestyle it, or you won't get it done. Um, there's a million people out there right now talking about waking up early. Um, and I'm not here to be the self-discipline police for you guys, but we've all got busy lives. I don't like waking up at 4 something every day, but if I need to do it once a week to get a workout in, I think it's important to do it. And it also helps you make better decisions the night before. Maybe you don't have that beer you wanted. So, uh, you know, it says excuses are like, we all know what they're like. We all have them though. And I think being realistic with your training is not an excuse. Uh, Completing 25% of your workouts, you're making excuses. So try and figure out where that balance is and do your best to make it a priority. That being said, modified training is better than no training. So like I finished work way late today and I got a 35-minute hike in instead of the 80 minutes I wanted, and it was better than zero. So I'd much rather you guys take the workout and do half of it than none of it. Um, and those are good habits to get in as well. Uh, be prepared for spontaneous training. So I have a pair of running shoes and running shorts in my car at all times, and they live in there. And that way, no matter what I'm doing, if I commute between like two cities fairly far away, I can just, pull over to some trail and go run if I somehow get off work an hour early, or I can go do a bunch of air squats or whatever. Um, I used to carry like a kettlebell in my car when I had a different job. So, spontaneous training is awesome. It'll make you feel accomplished. It will add to your base, but you got to plan for it. You just got to have stuff around that lets you do it. Um, And then poor food, alcohol, sleep choices can ruin the next day of training. I think we all know that. Um, we're going to do a nutrition talk, but just some kind of, small points. Um, if you're if you eat poorly or you're really trying to lose some weight, tracking your food on something like MyFitnessPal can go a really long way because it'll show you when you're, you know, totally falling off the deep end. Um, There's alcohol apps that'll help you make better decisions. They're not telling you to never drink, but they might coach you into making some good decisions in the week. So just you'll know the kind of person you are. Some people don't need any of this. Some people need a lot of it. But when you're training hard, it sucks to sabotage it by making bad decisions in the kitchen. Um, what uh, what else on this? Um, okay. Before we do questions, I'm gonna pull up Training Peaks and we're gonna talk about that. So give me a second here. Let's look at C brand. So C brand is training for the X Pier with me. So this is Training Peaks. What's going to happen is um, you are going to get emailed a link and you're going to, I believe, attach it to me. I only do it the way we're doing it for challenge once a year. So I always got to reorient my brain here. Um, and you're going to attach yourself to this plan or me, and I'll figure that out. Sorry, I sound like I don't know what I'm doing, but I haven't used this part of Training Peaks since the last time. C Brand's one of the guys I trained though on custom training. Your stuff will still look just like this. And this is the desktop version. They have a nice app, gets delivered pretty well. Um, if you sign up for the basic version, it's free. Uh, what it won't let you do is physically move workouts around to different days. So if you do Tuesday's workout on a Friday, you just need to go over to Tuesday and mark the stuff yourself. It's no big deal. And it won't auto upload workouts from your watch. You have to manually upload them. So if you want either of the other two things, you need to sign up for premium. I don't get none of that money. I have no affiliation with these people. It's just a good platform. And it's like 15 bucks a month or something. So I'd say half my athletes use basic and half use premium. You just whatever floats your boat. Um, so you can see there's a note there. So I'll give you guys go ahead. What's that? All right, I'm not hearing that. I'll keep talking. Um, Uh, so the note for the week will be like, what's the point of training this week? So that's what I do. I try and give you a baseline understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. And then that lets you kind of understand the intent so that if you need to skip a workout, you're still trying to hit the main intent, something like that. Um, so as an example, this says vanilla hike and fly, moderate effort hike and fly, 1,000 to 1,500 meters. Don't push this one. So um, he's not, this is actually a deload week here. So, I'm trying to get him to get some decent work done without crushing himself. It's kind of obvious what to do. Here's a strength workout. Um, so the main workout is 8 sets of 25 kettlebell swings, shake the hands out, 6 forward lunge each leg, then 6 each lateral leg. That's a hard workout for him. It's not. He's been training with me for a while. You wouldn't expect to see anything quite this hard with you guys right off the bat. But this is what a strength workout looks like. Then you can go into completed and you can mark how long it took you to complete it, and then it'll either turn green, yellow, or red. You want to, you can do how you feel. You can see down these pre-activity comments. That's where I do links to um, uh, um, videos if I think they're warranted. Underhead is the mobility. So it says overhead and hammies, overhead tissue smash, single leg extension stretch. These are all those stretches that can be found on that mobility or the ready state. Sorry, he's changed the name of his website like 5 times. Got your rest day. So this is the example of an interval workout. Um, so warm up, then 5 sets of 4 minute hard, and then 2 minutes harder, then 3 minutes recovery. If you actually click on the workout, it's actually got heart rates associated with it. If he had chosen to use the heart rates, and you can download those to your Garmin watch as an example, whenever there's these structured workouts, and you can hit go, and then it'll actually talk you through the workout. Don't need to do that, but you can. Let me see if last year's training plan. Okay, so here's like a midweek. So what was the date? We'll go over here. So September 4th. This is like a month out from the race. Last year, you can see I've got A group had a hike or a run for 90 minutes. B group had a hike or a run for 60 minutes. Uh, Said look for 2,000 feet of hiking or under 1,000 if running. Then you've got the A group strength workout, B group strength workout, so on and so forth. So this is what you guys are going to get as training um, in next week. That does that kind of make sense to everyone? Cool. Um, I will be putting up the training probably in like 2 week blocks. Um, and so this is the generic customized challenge training. Um, if you've got some real specific questions, reach out to me. I am here to help you. But this is not my custom training. Custom training is totally different. It's written for the individual. Uh, I can't answer 30 people's questions. This is kind of like, here it is, choose your own adventure. If it's not enough and you want custom training, then reach out to me and we can talk about that. So you will get an email. I have everyone's email. If you don't get an email by Saturday evening with the instructions on how to sign up for this, uh, you need to find me. I'm on Telegram, um, or you got the email before and see if somehow I screwed up and didn't get you included. So be proactive if you don't get anything from me by, let's say, Saturday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. That'll be my goal. Anyone got any questions on Training Peaks? I think it's pretty intuitive once you start using it.
I don't have Training Peaks questions. Are you open to questions about other parts of training?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So two things. One, how do you uh, modulate like volume between weeks? So how are you like what's your approach to like building volume throughout the training plan as a first question?
So I try and run in 3 or 4 week blocks, and then do that recovery week. Um, and so the training volume will get modulated a bit in that. So, we'll kind of climb the volume as we go, do the recovery week, and then you don't start right back where you ended. You actually drop back, maybe 30% and then build back up from there. That's not always true. So if we're doing like a muscular endurance block, the total volume goes down, but the intensity goes up for that particular block. And it's it it'll be all you want anyways. But I think I answered that question, which is we're going to build, we're going to recover, we're going to step back, we're going to build some more, recover, and do that. Um, it's only whatever it is, 4 months away. So it's really only like 4 or 5 cycles, and then we're there.
Sure. And then my other question is in the longer aerobic sessions, how strict or how important is strictness to like heart rate um, within the prescribed zones or exertion. Like if you're kicking along at an RP of 5, right, and then for 20 minutes you go up to like an 8, right? Is that going to kill your training? Is that something you should really avoid? Um,
Yeah. So I would I would say that what you want to be is at least 80 to 85% compliant. Um, and the reason is you do too much. Problem is a lot of people think they're at an 8 and it's like they're almost at a 10. And then they're changing what their body was doing at the moment. And it's quit searching for fat as a fuel source. Um, a lot of people then struggle to get that heart rate back down. Now, we do interval training to train that, but um, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't want people staring at their watch all the time. And if you come up on a steep hill and your heart rate kicks up a little bit, I think it's totally fine. Most people, um, when they get back to me, they'll be like, man, you said 180 minus my age, and I'm really slow at that pace. And the answer is yes, because you're not very fit yet. So you just need to do more of it. It's hard. It's hard to eat that, but it is important. And you can go find a million smarter coaches than me that'll say the same thing. So I think I answered that. I would say 80 to 85% of the time, try and stay in the zone, and then don't totally nerd on it out on it to where you're just staring at your, you know, watch all the whole time. We got time. Questions, anyone? And it can be about training. And if you got some others, if I don't want to answer them because it's, an hour long question, I'll let you know. But if you got some other specifics about the race or any of that kind of stuff, now's a good time since this is our first meeting.
Does the challenge have the same tasks as adventure?
No, we're going to not do that. We're going to try and have them. And I say no, and then I'll lie because the weather will be such shit that we're all doing the same thing. But in general, we're going to try and have the tasks be more appropriate to the challenge category and realize some of this is hard. So some of you are super fit and are fairly new in flying. That's why you're in the challenge category. And some of you are not very fit, but you can fly decently. Uh, Almost no one's not fit and doesn't know how to fly, or we wouldn't actually let them in the race yet. So um, I would say that depending on which of the two types of athletes you are and the way the task gets called based on the weather, you may have an easy day or you may have a hard day, and it could flip flop the next day. And I would say take the whole damn thing as just a learning environment and know that the whole point is then you go out there, you have a good race and a safe race, then you're racing adventure next year, and then it's game on. Um, and not that this won't be hard or fun, but we're gonna try and make it doable, and then we want you guys racing each other. And if we make it too hard, then it's didn't meet the criteria of being a challenge race.
Sweet. And then will we go over like some decision making and maybe I mean not like XC flying, but like maybe XC decision making per the day, or like maybe look at a couple mock tasks or something like as we get closer.
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about earlier is we're gonna do one or two of these that are like an hour or more, and we will take on one session we'll take actual race scenarios from past races because those are nice because you can look at the task, you can actually then look at the track, you can see what happened, and you can understand why a decision was made and whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. And we can look at a couple different athletes. So we're going to set that up, and we're going to take like day 1 and 2 last year specifically, and we're going to we're going to take like 2 or 3 different athletes from each day and then see how each of them did. um, and then we're also going to then take some, a task that hasn't been done, and whoever teaches it, whether it's me or Gavin or Logan or whoever, is going to talk you through how they would approach uh, planning for that day, and then potentially some decisions they might make as the day goes on. So that'll be coming down the pipe pretty soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
One of my concerns and comes to like being on the East Coast and dealing with oxygen. Like the last time I flew out on row was I took a pulse oximeter and I hit 85 feet. I was dropping below 90%. So is that we be high with O2 tank? Like what size? What do people generally use during the race, or how much time should I maybe get there early as possible to acclimate? Those are kind of things that are unknown in regimen.
Yeah. So, um, altitude's hard. So altitude tents work, but I mean, that's a major life investment. The masks you put on your face that restrict oxygen flow, they don't work. They don't actually do what an altitude restriction does. So I would not go that route. The single best route is to try and go early. I mean, obviously that's that's too obvious and maybe hard to do with life. But if you do go early, then you're going to want to expose yourself to, you might go and fly the first day and not do any hikes, and the next day do like a moderate hike and then fly and try and get a little higher. And you want to step into it. It's not generally good to, I mean, we all know acclimatization, have heard about it. Like you don't just go smash yourself on the first day. Um, but if you can get there early, that's the most important thing. If you can spend any time in a altitude tent before you go, that's great too, or would be huge actually. And I don't have any specific recommendations past that, but um, we can talk to Bill Beninati would be a good resource for you. So he's our medical director. He just did a podcast with Gavin on altitude. And he's a physician who has studied its effects and might have some better ideas on how to mitigate it.
Does pretty much everyone race so bring oxygen, or is it most just
Nobody,
kind of
not
have
on
it?
the, in a hike and fly race, no one carries oxygen because it's not conducive to racing. For the race to goal stuff, they're all flying with it. But yeah, I've never seen anyone carry oxygen on the, and we got tall last year. I mean, on the first day, we got up to 15 grand. Um, so cold too, by the way. Uh, like you're hot, and don't not come with like your winter gloves and stuff, because you can be launching Cove and it's like 90 degrees out and you get up to 15, 16 grand and it's proper cold. So some days you don't need to, like, the base is low, but don't show up without warm gear because that place can get real cold real fast.
On the topic of gear, are there particular shoes or styles of shoes that are used more frequently than others? Is it trail runners, approach shoes, etc.?
Almost exclusively trail runners. Approach shoes aren't going to do the job because of the amount of non just up we're doing, and we're not generally in rock. Um, you're going to want to try and be on trails and stuff as much as possible. Um, and then again, you might land in the desert and have to walk forever. So I see almost no one in boots, or no one in boots is probably even a better way to put it, and almost no one in approach shoes. So trail shoes are what, you know, I would have, um, for long multi-day hike and fly races, tend to also have some road shoes because you never know when you're going to wind up walking on the road all day. But the biggest thing is to find something that makes you happy, and your foot happy, and that you've tested it on steep stuff, flat stuff, and long days.
Sweet.
And Gavin did a whole foot care one last year that's available on the site that's worth watching because he figured out, at least for him, how to take care of his feet after having them like fall off for the first X Alps.
Copy. Thanks.
You bet. All right. Well, I'm going to go make some dinner. I imagine a lot of you are too. So be on the lookout for an email with the Training Peaks info. And in a week or so, when Gavin's back from Europe, we're going to schedule the next one of these and figure out which one we're doing. So more to come. And Telegram's there for questions. You can email specifics. Some you did already. And I forgot to mention, challenge, you guys are all signed up for this. If you decide to do personal training, then I'll give you the credit from the piece of your stuff that was for the generic training. And then any adventure athlete who wants to do the this training, the challenge training, send me an email and we'll figure out a way. There'll be a charge to get on it, but then you can jump on it too. So, because if you are on adventure and you're on this call, you will not get an email to sign up for Training Peaks. This is just for the challenge folks. So if you're on adventure and want to change that, just let me know.